What is up, guys? Welcome to another NBA Supercoach podcast. I'll be your host today, Verns. I'm joined by the wonderful Boz. How you doing, Boz?
Ferns, I'm really good. Another solid week of NBA Supercoach. Watched far too many games over the weekend, but we love it. So really enjoying it. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Not as good as you. I'll be doing even better if my rank was a bit better, but we're working on that. We're making adjustments, and I think we're learning. So that's all we can really ask for. My week overall, I went up about 500 places, which is nice. Scored 1,032. Yourself?
Yeah, I had 1,056 and actually went down 34 spots, but I'm going to call that a bit of a stabilizing week. Didn't have the likes of Wemby and Luca, and I think those that did kind of benefit from that, and obviously got rid of the second highest scorer for the round in Jalen Johnson because he finally decided to play a back-to-back, which he had not done previously when he was in my team. But can't knock him, love the bloke, and he showed he's a high-quality NBA Supercoach option if he is playing all games in that week.
Yeah, dude, absolutely brutal. I mean, this game mode has been so brutal. We talked to Janeth last week, and Janeth mentioned how he just doesn't know if he could deal with the frustration of players just being laid out or missing midweeks, and you'll bring people in for good schedules, and then they have two rests, and it's very annoying. I'm sure all of us Giannis captainers, the guys that brought in Donovan Mitchell, even the Wemby captainers, you thought you were going to the moon this week and then takes a spell. So just things you can't control, unfortunately, but very frustrating.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think we touch on it every week. It's going to happen. So you just got to embrace it. When it does happen, yes, you can be a little bit, down on yourself, or, you can feel a bit negative about it. But at the same time, it's going to happen another 10, 15 times throughout the year. So strap in and prepare for it, everyone.
All right. Well, we will start this off. Obviously, you can see DR is obviously not joining us today. Got family things he will be attending to. So, best of luck for him there. But what we will do is we will just go through a quick positive and negative for the week. I'm going to start off with the positive this week because last week I feel like Boz took them all and then I sat here not knowing what to do. Look, I'm going to go Jimmy Butler for me. Obviously got injured last week. Only played a couple of games. Wasn't great. I came out with a 116, 115 this week. I'll be honest, I've traded him for my team, so I can't see his score right now. But it was really, really nice to get that from him. I'll also give a honorable shout out to Sabonis, someone who only played 2 games on the full game week last week as well, and had a good bounce back this week, got like 107 or so. So, 2 premiums that I needed to do well, because I feel like they're both pretty potty, and they both did pretty well. So, yay. What about you, Boz?
Yeah, well, yeah. Firstly, it's great to see that Butler's kind of come back from an injury and he's playing some solid basketball like we thought he would. And yeah, Sabonis probably had a really slow start to the season, and Sacramento were horrendous, but I think he's finally getting the usage that he needs to provide good kind of super coach numbers. But for me, I'm going to shout out my 3 rookies that I fielded, and they all went nuts. So Cooper Flagg, number 1 pick with 102. Awesome work. Had a really good game today. Con Knuppel for Charlotte had an 83 over 4 games this week. And Derek Queen, who was a popular trade in cash cow from last round, getting an 80 over the 4 games as well. And, to be getting 80, 83, and 102 from your 3 rookies on the court, that is just awesome. They're 3 really highly touted picks. All 3 of them, I believe, were in the top, 15. Pelicans even traded away a future first to get Derek Queen, and he did start today. So big shout out to those 3 rookies for having tremendous weeks.
No, that's awesome. And with Queen as well, he's got that good fixture. So he's one of those guys you can field until Zion sort of gets back, which is really nice. Someone I wish I went. But I can't be upset going Coke Brenner because, let's be honest, he's punishing not owning. So positive there. Negatives for the week. Look, this is hard to choose. I'm going to have to give it to the man we mentioned earlier. It's going to be Giannis taking a break. He was my captain for the week, and he got outscored like so many points by Joker. He got outscored horribly by Wemby, and it's good enough what he scored, but it just really hurts when you got a 4-game week player that takes a spell on one of those games and you've captained him. But I do know, a lot of the community did that. I think he was the most highest owned captain for the week, so I'm not the only one feeling the pain. What about you?
Well, you're definitely not the only one. I had Giannis as captain, and I think 68% also had Giannis as captain. But look, hindsight's an easy thing. And I was speaking to a couple of guys on Twitter about it when he did get rested, and they kind of said, well, if you look deep into the schedule, he had 5 games in 7 nights. So if you really, if you're going in that extra mile and looking into the schedule and seeing 5 games in 7 nights, to be fair, you probably can expect someone like Giannis, who plays such heavy minutes, to miss. But it's just not something you kind of have to bank on or kind of try to predict. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to pick the guys because of what is in front of you, the 4-game week, and just hope they do play the 4 games. But to those guys that might have seen that and then skipped on the Giannis captaincy, I guess props to you guys because you've done some good research there. My negative, and I'll be really quick, I would have been Giannis, but I'm going to go to Donovan Mitchell. Something very similar. They had a 4-game week. He got a rest night. It was on a back-to-back, so I understand why. I just didn't think Cleveland were in a position to do that just so early in the season, considering Garland was out injured already. They'd already committed to resting Evan Mobley. So I just thought, I think Mitchell will play, but they decided to rest him as well. So that was a bit frustrating for me because I actually got him in, and he was one of the guys I got in for Jalen Johnson. So, hopefully he can repay the faith of the 4-game week this week.
Yeah, definitely a heavy trading target for most people, Mitchell was. And with that as well, I mean, obviously Cavs end up losing that game to Miami with all these rested players, which I don't know if you can really afford to do that too early in the season. You don't know how it's going to stack up later on, but each to their own. But we will bounce on forward a little bit. We will look at the Supercoach Cup. So congrats to all of those guys that qualified. If I'll be honest, if you're still playing the game actively, you probably qualified. It was the top 16,300 teams. And the amount of actual teams we have registered, I think it's only at, there you go, 32,000. So it's literally half the competition. So yeah, I think anyone that's still playing, you probably made it. This is where the test will probably come in because you're probably going to start playing against guys that actually are playing. And hopefully you can get some wins. It's nice and simple. It's just head to head. So it could be, you don't have to be the high scoring player every single week. You don't have to come first every single week. You just have to beat the other guy on the other side of the bracket. And you could be the lucky person that has a few matchups where people have down games and you make it all the way. So, good luck to everyone, unless you're playing me. But we'll jump into some league news now. So, some injuries here. So, run us through it, Boz.
There are a plethora of injuries. So many to talk about. I'll do it as quickly as I can. So you might want to kind of slow it down if you're watching this a little bit delayed, or if you're kind of watching this early Tuesday morning, maybe get your notepad out and write these down. But long-term injuries. Anthony Davis, who was questionable going into last week, has now been, again, said that he needs another 7 to 10 days to rest that calf up. So from someone who was questionable, which kind of means they're back between the next 1 to 3 games, to going back to 7 to 10, he's just someone that I'm not going to be trusting at all this season. You can probably come back to this timestamp when I have Davis in my team in round 20. But he's just someone that you cannot trust because he is so injury prone. Christian Braun from Denver, he tweaked an ankle and is out for 4 to 6 weeks. He's not someone we're going to own, but that actually gives more, not that he needs it, but more production for Jokic and also Jamal Murray. So Jamal Murray could sneakily be someone that you might put into your point guard. He's not someone I'm looking at, but because Braun's now out, that opens up maybe a couple more shots for Jamal Murray as well. Same with Houston. Tari Eason is out for 4 to 6 weeks with a hip. Again, we're not picking Tari Eason. To be honest, we're not really picking anyone from Houston because their schedule is terrible in the short term. However, when someone like Eason goes down, that just means there's more bench minutes for someone like a Reed Shepherd. So if you don't own a Reed Shepherd, he has one of the lowest break-evens going into this week. I still think he's a pretty good own to have, and he's been putting out some seriously good stats. And lastly, on the long-term injury list, we have OG Anunoby for New York Knicks. He's done a hammy, and he'll miss 1 to 2 weeks. That's relevant because Jalen Brunson's already out with an ankle. He's now gone down. So someone like Karl Anthony Towns is going to have to do a hell of a lot. New York Knicks' schedule isn't great this week, but they do go into a couple of 4 games moving forward. And if OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson are still out, then we can start to look at maybe a Karl Anthony Towns in that power forward center position. Short term, so who might be missing this week? And that's the important stuff. Kristaps Porzingis was out for the game today, meaning he's questionable for their next game. So if you have Porzingis or if you're thinking about getting him in, because Atlanta do have a 4-game week, maybe just check the injury report before you do that trade. Darius Garland for Cleveland. He's been out for about 3 games now with a re-injured toe. So again, Cavs go into that 4-game schedule. Just be careful. I wouldn't be trading him in. Ja Morant pinged a calf. Well, they said it was calf tightness. He's a TBA. We don't actually know any weeks, any days. He, from my understanding, is questionable as well. So, again, I don't think you would put Ja Morant on your team, but just in case you did. Paolo Banchero, who I think would have been really popular this week because Orlando Magic do have a 4-game week. He actually nicked a groin in their, not today's game, but the one before. So, again, there's no timeline on that injury. So, if you're thinking about getting Paolo, maybe just check the injury report the day of their first game. Bam Adebayo already confirmed out for the first game for Miami this week with a toe injury, so don't put him into your team. Zion was questionable for today's game. That's a great sign for not for Derek Queen owners, but a really good sign for those that want to go and trust Zion, although he did miss. So they do go into a 4-game week. He potentially probably will be back for their next game. But again, he's still questionable. So I just be careful on picking Zion. Jalen Brunson, I just mentioned, he hurt an ankle at the start of this week. There's no real timeline being given for him. I don't think he gets back before their next game, though, so I wouldn't be putting him in your side. Drew Holiday, who missed today's game for Portland with a calf injury, he'll be questionable going into the next game. I know a couple of people got him in because Portland had such a nice schedule over the next 4 to 5 weeks. So just keep a kind of a close eye on that one. Stephon Castle, playing an awesome week. So he was someone that I wasn't really sure on because of De'Aaron Fox coming back, but he was on track for a 100-plus 4-game Supercoach score this week. And unfortunately, today he left the game in the second quarter with a hip injury and did not return. So if you have Stephon Castle, they go into a 3-game week. I probably wouldn't hold on to him. I'd be looking to trade him or downgrade him somewhere. And then lastly, we have the alien, Wemby. Feel really sorry for Wemby owners because, this was the last 4-game week you're going to get from him for a while. I think they have the next 3 that are 3-game weeks. So, yeah, unfortunately, you didn't get to maximize him on a 4-game week. He was questionable with some calf tightness. Could just be giving him a rest day. We're not sure. If you have him, you're trading him. You're probably trying to get Jokic in if you don't have him. But they're all the injuries, long and short term.
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely love it. Quick fire. So what we will do is we will jump into the top 10 performers of the week. I'm just going to do a little screen share and I will try and get us through it the best I can. Play research. Perfect. Let's share this one. Okay, and here we go. I kind of want that bigger. Can we... Gosh, I really want this bigger. You know what?
That's right.
We don't need our faces. We can just do this. No. All
Sounds
right.
good.
So if you want to start us off, we got big bad Nikola Jokic there. You can see him in the yellow. For all those that haven't watched my round review, which I had just done right before this, the answer is I'm trading him in, and I'm obviously slapping the streak straight on him because in a 3-game week, he top scored, which is just bananas. Absolutely bananas. I mean, 2 weeks ago, he was at 3-game week when other players had a 4-game week, second highest scorer. 4-game week goes 200. 3-game week again, highest scorer in the round. It is bananas how many more points he scores than anyone else. And something I want to touch on quickly. I think me personally, Boz, I don't know how you felt about this, but coming into the year, I really put a lot of emphasis on the schedule. I think because we had that NBL background coming into this. But what I did I feel like learn is obviously the NBL, you get a 1-game week or a 2-game week. So you're getting double the production, where in this situation, you're getting like a 3 or a 4-game week. So you're only getting like a 33% extra, production instead, meaning it's more like there's not as much emphasis on the schedule. And if the play is good enough, such as Jokic, it's worth it. It's clearly worth it. So it's like I've learned in the short term already. Pick the best players. I know that sounds simple, but yeah.
No, I really, really like the way you've thought about that. And it's something that you do have to kind of transition to from playing NBL Supercoach. And it makes a lot of sense. We're seeing Jokic outscoring people on 4-game weeks quite comfortably. I know he's in a kind of realm of his own, but this is where you can start to kind of hold on to, let's say, a Shea, who I held on to. I really wanted, to hold on to him, just knowing that in a 3-game week, he's probably still getting a 120, and it's a really safe 120.
And what's so good is, since so many people did end up missing, he got as many games as anyone anyway, and he keeps missing the fourth quarter, and he just keeps playing, and it's so good. Well played, man. Well played. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Get back to
No, not at all. No, I appreciate that. It's something that, at the start of the season, I was thinking, geez, Shea's probably going to rest here because the first 2 games he played double OT games where he was playing 45 plus minutes. But since then, he's barely played over 30 minutes, which is great. So, yeah, hopefully he can continue well into this 4th game week playing every game. But you're right. There are some players that you can just hold in your team as long as they have a 3 or more game week. The 2-game week is probably where we start to talk about the schedule a bit more. It's where it gets a bit dicey. Nikola Jokic, I'm sure, will have a week where he has 2 games. You're probably not going to trade him purely because you won't be able to get him back in. But when someone like a Luka, for example, who has a 2-game week coming up this week, he's probably someone that you would trade because he's not out of reach now where you could just get him and trade him back in the following week. But I'll move on to Jalen Johnson because he is my boy and he was someone I started with. And, it was a bit of a roller coaster to start the year. I was speaking to our good friend DVG on Twitter midweek, and he was kind of praising, how well Jalen Johnson was playing. And I was like, yep, couldn't agree more. I started with him. I traded him out. And then I kind of went back just to double check what he did score. In week one, he scored a 53, which was fine because everyone only played 3 games, so it didn't matter. He rested one of those games. I only got 2 games out of him, but he got 53. And I thought, you know what, that's fine. I then backed him in to play the next 3 games. Or it was a 4-game week, I apologize. And that's where he went big. So that was his first big week in round 2. So then in round 3, I'm thinking, okay, he's on a 3-game week, but I'll keep him because he should play every game. And then he rests another game and only puts out a 40. So he's gone 53. And then I think it was about 135 and then a 40. So if you're looking at that 3-week sample size, he's not doing great consistently. And then I think to myself, well, they've got a back-to-back coming up in week 4. He's definitely going to rest one of these. And then Atlanta basically come out and say, we want to win as many games as we can on this road trip. And Jalen Johnson is pretty much going to play out of his skin. And I'll just give you some statistics to back that up. He played 35 minutes a game, which is not, something that he does all the time. He had 24 points, which is he's usually a low 20 scorer. So 24 is great. He had 12 rebounds a game, which is something he does quite well for the small forward position, but maybe not 12 a game. 9.3 assists. He's a great assist player from the small forward position, but more of a 5.5, 6 assist a game kind of guy. 2.5 steals, 60% from the field, and only 3 turnovers. So he played astronomical this week, like to the point where it could keep going. But I just don't think the way NBA is played, I just don't think he can average that again. There'll be weeks where he does it, but consistently he won't. So for me, it was just a week that I was unlucky. He's a superstar. He's someone that I would not blame if you're trading him in this week because he's going to be a really low break even. He has a 4-game week, but he's just someone that fills the stat sheet across the board. That's my little rant on Jalen Johnson.
No, honestly, I thought you were going to skip over him altogether after what he did. So, no, thank you very much for the insight. Look, Atlanta obviously have a great fixture, so I understand anyone getting him in. But, I mean, you've already mentioned it. Over the first 3 weeks, he had 2 wet rests. He didn't get a rest this week. It feels like there's a good chance a rest is coming. If it's not this game, maybe this week, the following week. And then that's where the fixture sort of isn't as, good when you start getting those rest games. But obviously insane stat numbers. I mean, that one game alone where he went bananas on the triple-double, had 7 steals. That was crazy, man.
That's wild stuff. That's a wild stat line.
Yeah. James Harden. How do we feel about that? I mean, obviously we talked about LAC having a really good fixture, I think, after week 1, but then he missed a few games in week, I think maybe it was week 3 onwards. They had a good fixture. I think he missed 2 games last week, though. Came back, obviously, all guns blazing this week, though.
Yeah, well, the Clippers are down Kawhi Leonard. They need to win ball games. They started the season poorly, and it pretty much falls on James Harden now. So he missed those games. It wasn't through injury. It was through personal. So he actually had a child, I believe, with his partner. So, you kind of can't be mad at a bloke that wants to go and obviously support his partner and his kids. So good on him there. But I did feel really bad for those owners that got him in that week because that was the juicy time to get Harden in. But I'm really hoping most of those people just thought, well, you know what? It hasn't worked out this week, but he's back now. He's my premium. I'm backing him in because he would have absolutely rewarded buyers at least this week in week 4, maybe not in week 3. But yeah, a massive 159. Did it on some big numbers. I think he had 2 triple-doubles in that stretch. The only thing that's nerve-wracking is he played 40 minutes a game over those 4 games. So that's a lot of minutes for a 35-year-old man. James Harden has got good longevity, but we know that in the past, especially when he was, maybe considered a little bit underdone in terms of how his body composition wise. He would kind of break down, unfortunately, and pick up maybe a little niggle here and there. So far, so good. I'm hoping that Clippers can maybe win a few more games a little bit easier, so he's not having to bloody play 40 minutes a game, because that's a lot of basketball so early in the year for a man like that to play. We'll touch on the schedule a bit later, but he's definitely someone that you can bring in again, because I do think the Clippers have at least 1 to 2 more 4-game weeks in the next 3.
Yep, awesome. So we have Lauri Markkanen coming up next. Obviously, some of the people didn't start. He had a 2-game week, had a banger week too, though, when he was on a 4-game week. I believe last week was pretty poor from him, though, on the 3-game week, and then bounces back again this week with a massive schedule. Really surprised to see the ownership at 17.5%, because I've sort of mentioned his schedule hasn't been anything to die for, but I think the craziest thing you see there is actually the little brackets right there, the 2.3 million he's made. That is what you want on like these premiums, or I guess maybe mid prices you consider it. You want them to not only score big points, which he's obviously done, but they will make money on top of it. That is the best of both worlds.
Yeah, Lowry's just got that massive ceiling, but he's also got a really low floor. So in that 3-game week when his shooting wasn't on, and trust me, there'll be weeks where his shooting is not on and he's just jacking up terrible shots. He puts out some really low scores because he does really rely on those points. Like I think he had 40-plus points today, and I think a couple of weeks ago he had a 50-point banger. So he can score, but he really relies on that to get a good Supercoach score. And, I think he came into the season a bit underpriced because he had a really poor year the year before. So well done, I guess, to those that got him in early. But for me, it's a bit of a yin and yang. Each week you're going to be either really, really happy or really, really disappointed. So he's someone I won't really be owning, I don't think, much this year. But if you can kind of stomach that yin and yang week on week, I guess he's a fair enough own to kind of hold over a 3 or a 4-game week.
Yeah, I think from memory, I'm not going to click on him because I'll be honest, anytime I click on people, it just takes forever to load and I want to kill us. But I'm pretty sure from memory in the 3-game week, he went 11, 11, 17. So like really low, like 49 in a round. That is lower than our rookies. So bananas. Now Luka, congrats to anyone that went for Luka. Obviously had the 4-game week, so a really good score here. If you brought him in, I think most people captained him that brought him in, so would have been very happy with that, because I think probably Giannis, Wembanyama, and Doncic were the 3 most captained players in the week. So yeah, if you did get Doncic, great. You did the best out of everyone there. So yeah, good week from him, obviously. I feel like Lakers are on his back, so he has to have good weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll quickly touch on Luka. He was the one we were a bit scared about playing the back-to-back, but funnily enough, he's the one that plays the back-to-back when we compare Giannis to Luka last week. So, it is a bit of a roulette, guys. You're not going to always get it right with the schedule. And I think Lakers were on the road and they just kind of needed to grit out a few wins, and they definitely did that. One thing with Luka, and I mean, he's scoring your 130s, but geez, he could be scoring so much more. Like, for example, this week, right, he had 30 points a game. So over 4 games, he averaged 30 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.5 steals, and just under 1 block. If I'm just seeing that kind of as concrete, I'm thinking, this guy is putting up, maybe 60 Supercoach points a game. Because if Jokic was doing that, he'd be doing that. However, this is what kills him: his field goal and his turnovers. So he shot at 43%. From the field. Shot at 80%, which is not good for a guard, but it's good for Luka, to be honest. And he had over 3 turnovers a game. Now, after his first game this week, it was funny. Someone on Twitter kind of hit me up and was like, how the hell is Luka's Supercoach score so low? And I think he had like 37 Supercoach points. Because when you looked at his stat line, he had a 30-point triple-double. But he actually shot the ball at I think it was 37%, which means you're losing so many points to missed shots and turnovers. That it really does limit the ceiling. But in saying that, he's doing so much for that team that when he's on a good run, he'll be someone that I'll be owning in my side.
Yeah, I think we definitely talked about that at the start of the year, the field goal percentage being so crucial. Obviously, if someone scores 35 points but misses 20 shots, you're only getting 15 points for that altogether. So then even with a triple-double, an extra 10 points for rebounds, 10 points for assists, you're only getting the 35, and then that's the big difference there. But yeah, definitely something Luka can obviously improve on. I'm not sure how that'll change when Bron's back, but I guess that's for future us to decide. Obviously, once again, not talking about schedule, but he's on a double game week this week. So anyone that did bring him in, 32.6% of you, I see you there. You kind of got to trade him out. Victor, you know what? I'll just let you take it from here. What do you think about
Yeah,
Victor?
yeah, I was just going to say I might just go 6 down to 10 really quickly so we can move forward. Yep. There's not much to say, but yeah, Wemby, you were right if you already had him to hold him. This was the big week. He started off really well. Unfortunately, a bit of calf tightness missed. He has three-game weeks in a row. Probably someone I look to move, especially if you don't have Jokic. Shea, someone that I think a lot of people would have traded out last week just to kind of free up some funds to get maybe a Luka in or get a Wemby in. I think that was still the okay play because he was coming into a 3-game week. He now has a 4-game week back. Now, he's still 25% owned, but I'd love to know how many in that 5% range actually still own Shea. He's going to be maybe a really solid 125, hopefully, this week in the 4-game, or even get over that. Hopefully, we aim for about a 140. Definitely someone that you can consider trading in. However, there might be some better options we talk about a little bit down the line. Jimmy Butler, great bounce back week. I'm glad that he gave you something, Verns, because I know he took a couple of nights off in round 2, I believe it was. He's going to be putting out these scores when he plays. Like, he's a great basketballer. The Warriors want to win. The Warriors are locked in. They've made some starting 5 changes just because the team wasn't playing hard enough. And I think that really complements Jimmy Butler. So he's a real defensive machine, really efficient for the small forward position, power forward position. And he'll be someone that you can count on when he's healthy. Onyeka Okongwu, he really has benefited in Atlanta from Porzingis missing a few games. I don't expect him to be getting the 115, but he's a really solid guy. Like, he's improved drastically in the last 2 or 3 years. So, we're probably not going to be looking at him too much for the rest of the season. But if, let's say, for example, Porzingis was traded later in the year or Porzingis has a bit of a longer-term injury, he's definitely someone that can actually put up these type of scores just because he's so efficient and does a lot of everything. And lastly, Franz Wagner. He's really going to benefit if Paolo Banchero is out. He is someone that plays really okay or fine. He plays great when they're all together on Orlando, but once one of them goes down. So if Banchero gets injured, Franz really steps up, and that's what he's been doing the last 3 games of this week. Orlando, and we'll touch on it in a moment, they have a really interesting schedule. They go a 4 into a 2, so he's definitely a 1-week play. He'd be a massive pod play. And I really think he's in for a big week. But yeah, there's our top 10.
Awesome. Thanks so much for going through that. The only thing I will mention here for the Victor owners is, I know you said you'd probably trade him out on a 3-game week, but we did mention sort of before how it's like there's a few guys on I don't think you worry about fixture with, and I think Victor can kind of fall into that category. At the end of the day, he only played 3 games to get that 131, which is an elite score. It's the 6th highest score of the round. It's almost matching Doncic. I think him, Shea, Doncic, Joker, like, they're really the 4 that stand out. And obviously Giannis, that are the 5 that stand out in my mind, that it's like kind of fixture irrelevant to a degree. As long as they're not hitting a 2-game week when other teams have 4-game weeks, I think they'll be pretty good to have. Saying that, obviously they're all so damn expensive that how do you have the funds for them all?
Yeah, exactly right. You're going to have to sacrifice some weeks to get players you want in, but then other weeks you can obviously hold on. The only thing I'll say about Wemby, he averaged 32 points this week with 13 rebounds and 6.5 assists with 3 blocks. The blocks will stick. The 52% from the field, I don't know. And he didn't miss a free throw. He actually took 6 free throws a game. So over 3 games, you'd say he shot 18 free throws for the round and didn't miss one. So not saying he's going to miss half, but he's definitely overperformed by a slight amount this week, I think. But again, we don't know which weeks he's going to overperform, and we don't know which weeks he's going to have a sluggish one. So you might just benefit from keeping him in a 3-game week. And he has one of those weeks where he averages, like in round 1, where he averaged 6.5 blocks in those first 3 games. So yeah, I know what you're saying, Verns, but it's also important you kind of look at the data just to make sure that what they're doing can be replicated consistently.
Yeah, I look, just saying that, obviously he's played 3-game weeks. 1 he went 155, 1 he went 131. So Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, we know what he can do. What we will jump to now is the schedule because we will be looking at the future picks going forward and who you want in your team. Now, it's just going to be the schedule from last week with DR not here. Unfortunately, we haven't had any, I guess, adjustments to any of this. DR is the man for all of that. So let's ignore the arrow at the top here pointing down at the 3 because we really want it from the 4 onwards. But the 3 teams, when I look at this schedule that light up for me, first of all, it's actually going to be Toronto. Sorry, it's going to be from the 5 downwards, not the 4. Sorry,
Big
5
five,
downwards.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, team. It's going to be Toronto. So obviously they have 3 4-game weeks, but something to not be underestimated is they have a 3-game week when everyone else has a 2-game week. So in reality, they actually have 4 weeks in a row of max games, which is beautiful. That's the best schedule there is. That they're the guys you want to focus on. The second team behind that would be Pelicans, who have 3 4-game weeks before a 2-game weeks, and they're the only 2 teams that actually have back-to-back 4-game weeks. Nobody else, if you look at this fixture, actually have back-to-back 4-game weeks. They either have a 3-game week this week before a 4-game week, or they have a 4-game week going into a 3-game week, which means the next best team that we would see is probably Atlanta, who have a 4-game week into a 3-game week into a 4, and then a 3 when everyone has a 2-game week. So they would probably be the third best schedule we would look at. So your boy JJ could be making a return. But yeah, they're the big 3 that stand out for me. And then we have a couple of guys on the 2-game weeks, obviously LA and Houston. But what stands out to you, Boz? Or anything you want to touch on there, I guess.
Well, I really like a little sneaky pickup on that was it round 8 where Toronto has the 3. Like, I think people will kind of look at that and be like, 3, that's no good, but no one has 4. So that's a really nice pickup. So they're definitely the team to target. I know a lot of people will be trading in Scotty Barnes. To be honest, Scotty Barnes is probably the only. I mean, there is a couple of other viable options, but I think Scotty Barnes is the most consistent option. Jakob Poeltl's been playing really well, and the reason why he's such a good Supercoach player is because he doesn't actually do anything but dunk or basically shoot from under the ring. So his efficiency is really high all the time, and he's a good shot blocker. So he's someone that could also feature. But again, most people are going to have either Wemby or Jokic in their center position. So unless you run him at the flex, maybe he could be an option. Players like Emmanuel Quickly, Brandon Ingram, they just don't do enough consistently enough. Like, they might have 1 or 2 good games in the 4-game week, but they're not going to be doing it as consistently as a Scotty Barnes. Look, Pelicans again, they're a tricky one because there's no one I like. I mean, Trey Murphy, who I shouted out last week, had a really consistent week. So I think Trey Murphy put up around 100 flat. He literally had 100. Yep. So that's a 25, average for the week. And I think that's what you can expect from him. But I don't think he can get much worse. He's a very good player. He's a very efficient player from that position. So, if you just wanted someone that was quite safe and getting you 100, you could definitely play a Trey Murphy. But look, I'm not trusting Zion. Jordan Poole's not back from injury, and I'm not trusting him when he's back. I just don't think there's any premium targets to really target from the Pelicans. So look, for me, if you're not going from someone from Toronto, I think you got to start looking maybe a little bit further ahead. Like, who does have that kind of nice 4-3-4 fixture where, yes, you're not maximizing next week, but at least this week and then the week after, where most teams do have a 4. But, where are you actually maximizing there? I think the only thing for me is I'm actually pretty comfortable with trading in anyone from any team this week, unless it's Houston and LA. Like, you're not going near any 2-game weeks, and Houston have a 2 into a 3, and so do the Lakers 2 into a 3. So you're not trusting anyone to be putting up good numbers there. But if you're looking kind of forward and thinking, all right, New York Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns, he potentially is going to have some monster weeks coming up. I want to get him in now just so I'm not worrying about that headache next week. He's someone that I wouldn't mind, or I'm not going to do it, but I wouldn't blame you for doing it. Or if you're someone, at Detroit, and I know Cade Cunningham's been out all week, but if he was, for whatever reason, named in their next game and you're thinking, wow, I want to get this guy for their nice 4-4 run, but I want to get him this week, sure, get him and just see what he does for you on the 3-game week. We said there are some guys that can score well enough on the 3-game week. So look, it's probably not as easy this way just because the teams that do have the 4 were really limited in the premium options that we can actually pick.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, with it, obviously, I said I sort of learned from this week and for what we've seen the data so far is that it's not as important. It's fine to have these guys who have one game less. Saying that, obviously it's always great to have a baseline of guys that have the maximum amount of games. If you have those kind of guys on your field and you can leave them there for 3 weeks and trade around them, that's sort of what you want to do. Put a player on field, trade around them. I put Jimmy Butler in my team to start, and I traded around him, left him in my team until sort of this week. And that's what it allows you to do. Bringing in the premiums allows you to make trades around that. You can move your rookies around. You're not looking at your premium thinking, okay, I have to move them this week because now they're going into a 2-game week, or now they've got another couple of 3 games, or X, Y, Z. You can leave them there. You can focus on the rookies. You can focus on the other things that are happening in your team. So that's what a good fixture does allow you to do. So, yep, definitely keep that in mind. Sorry, the other team I actually did miss that probably has the fixture just as good as Atlanta would be Chicago, going 4-3-4-3, which is really nice there. I did like the Knicks shout out as well because they go obviously 3 this week, but then a 4-4-3, so that turns quite nice there. But yeah, I don't mind the shout of feel free to go early on someone. And if you feel confident in where your team's sitting, then definitely. But yes, a huge shout out to Arson Dragon for that once again. Awesome fixture. I rely on this literally every week when picking my players. Yep. Awesome. So we will look. We sort of talked about targets already. Personally, I already have Scotty Barnes in. I'll be honest. If you haven't already watched my round review, I've already talked about my 2 trades, sort of Denver, Jokic, and Barnes. They're the moves. We will talk about some rookies, though, that we can also look at targeting. So I'm just going to quickly jump off this screen and actually jump back to my share screen. And I will quickly bring up the break-even game for us this time around.
Yeah, I might just shout out a few more options while you're doing that.
Oh, yep, sorry, go ahead.
Some premium. That's fine. So just for those at home, if you haven't got any of the following, I don't mind them as options for either this week and maybe the next couple of weeks. So Trey Murphy has an ultimate fixture. Again, we just touched on him. Bit of a 25 average player. Scotty Barnes is probably more of an upside play. You can put up some big numbers there, and he's got the best fixture coming up. If you haven't got Jokic, pretty obvious, get him in. He's the best player in the game by a country mile. Jalen Johnson, if you want to go through potential heartbreak or be really rewarded when it doesn't break your heart, Jalen Johnson is probably the best Atlanta option, especially while Trae Young is still out. Tyrese Maxey, someone we haven't spoken about for a couple of weeks just because he's had a 2-game week. He had an all right week. I think what we're seeing now with Maxey is his field goal isn't as great, and he's never been a traditionally good field goal player. And I think in the first few games, he was really lifting his scores from that. For example, this week, I know it was only a 2-game sample size, but he shot 37% from the field. That's just something that kind of does make sense for Maxey because he takes so many shots a game. He took 24 shots a game in those 2 games. Now, Embiid and Paul George should be back for at least 1 or 2 of their 4 games coming up. So in those other 2 games, you just know Maxey's jacking shots and you're hoping they're going in. But I think Maxey's a really good kind of shout to get in for this week. And then lastly, players like Denny Advia, who we spoke about last week, James Harden still has a decent run, Donovan Mitchell, if you can trust him, and Josh Giddey, who's been really awesome. It's great to see a fellow Aussie doing some good work. Had a triple-double today and a double overtime loss. But Giddey will be someone that will just continually give you across-the-board stats all year. And then if you want a 1-week play, Shea, if you got rid of him, want to get him back for that 1 week, he's someone. And also Franz Wagner, if Paolo Banchero is out, as we expect he will be. They can be some really nice scoring 1-week plays.
Yep. All right. Final actually shout out for this because I realized I skipped them again. So Atlanta, Chicago, and Miami, have the 4-3-4-3. So anyone from Miami that you would shout out from there?
Well, Bam would be an option, but he's been injured. So he's already out for the first game this week. So you're not going to trust him. If Tyler Hero was playing, he's had a long-term injury from the offseason. He'd be someone we'll be talking about. But no one else really tickles my fancy, to be honest. They've got like Norman Powell, who he's a good player, but doesn't do too much Supercoach-wise. There is Khalil Ware, who's been pretty much taken over the center minutes for Bam Adebayo. He's played really well over the last week, but once Bam comes back, and that could be the second game of their 4-game week, he pretty much gets reverted back to a 15-minute bench role, which is not enough for Supercoach scoring. So I think you can just kind of hold off on Miami until maybe Bam gets back or even Tyler Hero a bit later in the season.
Yep. Easy. Thank you. All right. Let's jump back to my stream. Do I have to remove that? There we go. Awesome. We might just make this full screen again because that was much nicer. That was not the one I wanted to click. Whoopsie daisy. Will this work? There we go. Sorry. So we can see break-even game. So these are the rookies we're going to be targeting. We talked about Reed Shepherd. Now, look, his break-even is elevated in the sense that he has a 2-game week. So naturally, you don't score as many points, meaning your break-even's obviously compensating for 2 games, so it's automatically lower. So on a technical basis, Jensen and Reed are actually the guys with the lowest break-even as they both play 3 games. They both went bananas this week. You can see the 79 points from Jenkins there. And obviously being priced at 4.3 million, it means you have an insane break even. Same with Reed. He was a 93 with a 5.9 break million price tag attached to him, and at minus 34 break even. So you can sort of see it in my team already. I'll be honest, had Shepard already, and then Jenkins and Reed I've traded in because even if it just ends up being a 1-week play, I'm assuming there was injuries in Detroit as to why these guys got mad minutes. But even if it's a 1-week play with a break even that small, I will take the cash and run.
Yeah, so you're right. There were injuries. So Cade Cunningham, who is their best player, their point guard, pretty much was ruled out after the first game of their week. And then Jenkins came in and played the extra 3 games, I believe it was. And he went bananas. In all fairness, he was awesome. I'd never heard much about him. He's 24 years old. I looked him up today. But yeah, I guess if Cade comes back, and I kind of went back into the game logs, he only played 1 game with Cade, and it was that game that Cade got injured. Cade ended up playing the entire game. It went to double overtime. Jenkins had about 35 minutes that game, and he was really hot. But the games before that, he logged something like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and then he was getting some DNPs, which means do not play, or did not play for those that probably aren't aware. The thing with Jenkins is I think he's played himself into more playing time. So I think if we look at Derek Queen last week, he played himself into more minutes to the point where he's starting. If Cade comes back, I don't think he plays as much, but I think he's good enough now, or shown that he's good enough to get minutes. So he's a very fine selection. I wouldn't be expecting 80 points over 3 or 4 games, but with a negative 36 break even, he's definitely someone that can have some minutes carved out. Now the other one, Paul Reed, I don't trust him as much. He physically, the only reason why he's in the center position all week was because they had another player out, their second best player, Jalen Duren, who's had a massive start to the year. They're a like-for-like player, big rebounds, good defensive stats, don't score the ball as much. Pretty much he's been given the go-ahead for tomorrow. So I think he plays in Detroit's next game, which means I don't know how many minutes Paul Reed will play. However, again, as you said, Vern, that negative 34 break-even, it's one of those things where it's like you may as well risk it, because what if Duren does get re-injured, or what if Duren gets in foul trouble and they're like, well, you know what? We've backed in Paul Reed all week. We may as well do it again. He can very easily, in at least 1 or 2 of those games, put up a decent score, and then he makes you that big, big money.
Yeah, look, I mean, personally, I don't know how I'd feel. I mean, if you came out and you were, your star players are injured, you come into the lineup, and I'm pretty sure Detroit went undefeated this week as well. And you come in and you go bonkers for your team, and then the players come back and you just get relegated back to 5 minutes bench time. Like that just said, I don't think you can do that to someone, can you? Like that just sounds ridiculous. As you said,
Yeah.
hopefully they play themselves into some minutes.
Yeah, and I was about 100% about to agree with you there. I think he's definitely, and that's the whole thing about NBA. Like these players take their opportunities and then they get rewarded. So, it may not be him playing 35 minutes a night, but he also might not play 5. He might still get those maybe 18 bench minutes, which is still enough if he's really efficient to put up some good numbers. Because over this week, Jenkins played 37 minutes, averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, basically 8 assists a game, with 2.5 steals on 47% shooting. Like you can't get any better than that, with really low turnovers as well for a point guard, only 2 and a bit turnovers. So a really productive week. And as you said, Vern, a week where he made the most of his opportunity, and that was rewarded in his fantasy production there for Supercoach.
Exactly. And it wasn't like the team, as I said, they went undefeated. Like if your team goes 0-3, it's like, yeah, you did great as the sub, but you didn't carry the team. You didn't get us all the way through, sort of thing. But no, they went undefeated. Like, come on. Like, what more can you do? If you don't get minutes after that, then gotta find a new club. No.
Yeah.
But yes, we will move down the line, and this is a huge drop off, as we can see. You jump straight down to New York Knicks. What is that? Shamit is the name there. Minus
Yeah.
15 break even. That's 19 extra points that he has to score just to match what the other guys are doing, sort of thing. And once again, somebody I don't really know. I didn't see him at all, actually. So did you get any insight on this?
Yeah, I can speak to Landry Shamet. He's a journeyman. He's a veteran, as you would say. I was surprised at how many minutes he's actually been getting this year. He's been coming off the bench, and he's been averaging in the mid-20s of minutes, and that's probably because he's a decent shooter. So I guess, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, they create, and then he kind of just sits in the corner, and then, every now and then he'll just fall into 15 points a game. He's put up some big game. He actually, funnily enough, yesterday he had 36 points. So that's probably why his break even is what it is and why his weekly score is what it is. However, OG Anunoby has been ruled out for 1 to 2 weeks, and we touched on that before in the injury segment.
Yep.
Jalen Brunson, I know he hasn't got a timeline, but I just don't see him coming back. He had a really bad ankle sprain. He's a really good healer, but I feel like he doesn't play the first couple of games. So I actually don't mind Landry Shamet. I've actually been looking into putting him in my team, just in the shooting guard bench position, because I do think for at least the next week, and then if he continues to play off the bench for their next 2 4-game weeks, I really think he can make some decent money at his price. I think I like him a little bit more than Paul Reed. I think I like him a lot more than the guys below him. I'm really tossing up between Jenkins and him. It's tough. I might go Jenkins because of the dual position, but I currently have Landry Shamet just because I think maybe consistently he might get a little bit more opportunity, because he was still getting 25 minutes a game when all their players were playing. It was just off the bench. Whereas Jenkins, when Cade was back, was only getting 15. So I don't know. It might seem dumb, and I've made every right move this year so far with the rookies, but I'm kind of, my gut's telling me to go for Shamet as opposed to Jenkins. But in saying that, I wouldn't kind of, speak negative on anyone for putting in Jenkins. He has basically the best break even there is.
Yeah, and look at the end of the day, Shamet, 4.4 million. That's really nice. That's really nice and cheap. That's what we want from the rookies. I think me and you talked about it earlier in the year, but early in the season, but the rookies aren't going to be cheap forever. Even these guys get a few games when there's a few players that get injured, for example, like we have now. Jenkins is going to have a huge price ride. He might get to 8 or 9 million, and then he gets rotated down to these 10 minutes or whatnot, or ends up with a few did not plays. And even if there's an injury in future, you're not going to bring in a guy at 8 mil or something like that. So you really need to take advantage of the cash when it is there. Now, Jordan Goodwin, obviously we had Giuseppe is his name, or I think it's Giuseppe. I'm probably getting that name wrong, isn't it? What's his name again from our Suns? He went down injured in one of the games here. I'm guessing maybe that's why we've got a bit of an elevation from Goodwin here.
Yeah, you're right.
The case?
It's definitely not Giuseppe. It's Grayson Allen, I think you were talking about potentially.
Oh gosh, who am I thinking in my head? I'm just going to
Gillespie, I reckon you're thinking of. Gillespie.
That's probably what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's not injured. That's all right. Well, Gillespie's still playing, so he's fine. But Grayson Allen, he actually had 42 points in their first game, like 42 actual points, which is a career high. And Matrix from Ball Logic actually brought him in, funnily enough, which was a massive play from him. But then, unfortunately, in that second game in the first quarter, he got injured and didn't play the rest of the week. So a bit of a stiff one there. So, yeah, he went out injured, which meant there was an extra guard kind of rotation spot. And Jordan Goodwin's a bit of a streaky player. He's a decent creator. I just don't see him getting a consistent enough minutes, especially when Grayson Allen's back. I'm not sure how long he's out for. I think there's better options. I think if you don't have Shepherd, you're getting him, but then Jenkins and Shaman are probably better options than Goodwin. Jordan Walsh, I'll quickly touch on him. He took over the starting role for Josh Minot, who was someone that everyone traded in about 2 weeks ago from Boston. He needs to be traded out. I don't know what he's done. He's obviously, and I spoke about it last week, he has these games where he gets in foul trouble or he does something defensively the coach doesn't like, and then the coach just pulls him. For whatever reason this week, the coach didn't just pull him from the court, he pulled him from the lineup, essentially, and barely played him. So thanks for coming, Josh Minot. You made some good money for us, but you are out of the door. Jordan Walsh, it could be the case of the exact same thing. Like, he's been okay this week, but who's to say that he starts doing things that the coach doesn't like and then he gets pulled? I think Boston are in a bit of a weird position at the moment because they haven't got Tatum and they're winning some games and they're losing. I think the coach is a bit frustrated, just trying to kind of figure out what is the best starting five. So I wouldn't really trust him. Ace Bailey got the start, which was awesome to see for Utah. He fouled out in 10 minutes today, though. So he was on for a big score this week. And then he came out today. And that's what rookies do. They have these games once or twice a week where their shot's not on or they're just not getting involved. And or for whatever reason, Ace Bailey decided to foul out, which is 6 fouls, by the way. NBL's 5, but NBA is 6 fouls in 10 minutes. So that's somewhat capped his score for this week and his money making, but he's still got a negative break even. I think he's an okay option if he's starting, which I think they are going to kind of persist with that moving forward. Jackson, he hasn't played this week. He's injured, so don't worry about him. Javonte Green, again, he was an injury replacement guy. Detroit's third best player, I would say, Azar Thompson. He was out as well all week, which is crazy to think they won. They won all these games and they didn't have 3 of their best players. But, he kind of filled in for an injured Thompson and got a decent score, but you're not trading him in. And then Craig Porter Jr., he's great when Mitchell rests. He's great when Garland's out injured. He's great when Lonzo Ball rests on a back-to-back, but he's just not going to consistently get enough time. And I think there are better options, as we said before, than Craig Porter Jr. to choose.
Beautiful. Goodwin, definitely the correct narrative. And I just got my players confused, so thank you for that. Minot, that's super annoying. I had him on the bench personally, so it didn't really affect me too much. But I did move Ace Bailey the Minot, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago. And I don't actually know if I really made that much money at the end of the day because Bailey bounced back. And we did talk about that we thought he would do that, but just maybe took him a bit to get into it. And it's great that he has gotten into the groove and maybe could be a good target now, especially considering he's a high talent and he clearly showed it this week. 64 points down, and he did that not even in the 4 games. He did that in the 3 because, as I said, 10 minutes and he was out. So definitely an option. But it's hard to look at those options when you see them minus 34, minus 36, minus 37 up here. Pretty hard to look past that, but I guess if you want more consistent guys that aren't just going to be 1 week cash injections, then maybe Bailey's probably going to be more consistent than that. I think you had a lot of faith in Shamot, so other guys you can look at. Awesome. I think that'll be all our rookies done, so I think we'll bounce back to me and you on the screen and probably go through our captains. I think it's pretty simple. We talked about it 2 weeks ago when he had a 4-game week. Apparently, we should have talked about it. You did talk about it last week, actually, but we should have put more emphasis on it. And it has to be Jokic. If you don't bring Jokic in and you don't captain him, you're just going to fall behind. You're going to lose your cup matchup to anyone that does do that. So just do it. That's simple.
Yeah, 100%. You have to put Jokic as your captain. He's played a lot of games. Well, he hasn't missed a game this season, and he's played them decent minutes. They haven't really blown anyone out to the point where he's not playing deep into the 4th quarter, unlike Shea, who's barely playing a 4th quarter at the moment. Even if he's playing, so why I bring this up is he plays 5 games in 8 nights, which is probably the toughest schedule you'll get. Some teams sometimes play 5 games in 7 nights, so they might go back-to-back, one night off, a single, 1 night off, back-to-back. But he's kind of got a little bit of rest in between. With only 1 back-to-back in that stretch, but something tells me potentially he did pop up on the injury list yesterday. He was questionable with a wrist injury. He's actually probable for tomorrow's game, which means that it probably actually wasn't really nagging him too much. From what I saw yesterday, it was actually his non-shooting hand, which is great, which means it's not actually really affecting his ability to shoot the ball. I just feel like potentially towards the end of the week, so they go Chicago, night off, New Orleans, night off, then Houston, Sacramento in a back-to-back, night off into Memphis. So maybe around that Sacramento game, potentially if they've won the 3 previous, they might rest him, but we're not going to bank on that. We are locking the C on Jokic because, as we know, all it takes for that man is 3 games to put up a really big score. So hopefully for our sake, he gets the 4 and we get that big, juicy 200 potentially. But it wouldn't surprise me if maybe one of those games we see either limited minutes or we see a bit of a rest for Nikola. Some other quick options if you really were daring. Shea, if you had him, I think he's got a nice, consistent week. No back-to-backs, just 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off. So that's nice. Jalen Johnson, who's in a rich vein of form. If you want to get him in and go a bit potty with that, be my guest. And lastly, maybe Tyrese Maxey. I'll put him in there because we can't deny what he's done to start the year. And they do definitely have at least 1 back-to-back this week, which means that we know Yet they do. They have a back-to-back midweek, which we know that Embiid and Paul George, who's meant to make his debut, will definitely be probably both resting in one of those, which means we can probably get a really big Tyrese Maxey game. But again, you'd be daring to go any of those guys over Nicola.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, I guess to round it off, do we usually go through our trades? I feel like we usually go through our trades. My plans at this current stage, I already sort of mentioned it. Jokic is going to come into my team. I cannot do this anymore. Scotty Barnes is going to come into my team. This means that I'll be sending out Sabonis and Butler to make that happen. And then, as you saw it, Jenkins and Reed. I kind of want to chase that 1 week cash injection. Worst case scenario, if it is a 1 week cash injection, then you just pivot them to another rookie, bank the money. Easy done.
Beautiful.
Yourself, Buzz?
So you're using a boost, are we?
I am. I think the potential cash injection we could get is going to be worth it. I think Scotty Barnes' fixture is super, super good. And I'm not against burning these boosts early to make money and to more or less make money while still trying to keep your score relevant to then hopefully mean that we can transition to a better late game. At least that's what I'm hoping. We got plenty to burn, so.
No, excellent. And I think you're right. Scotty Barnes' fixture is looking juicy. They got Charlotte, Philadelphia, Washington, Brooklyn, who, they're all playing not great. I mean, Philadelphia being the best out of that bunch there, but Charlotte, Washington, Brooklyn, they're having a tough season. So it could be a big week for Scotty Barnes. But yeah, my idea is yet to get Scotty Barnes in. I'm moving on Devin Booker, who I've kept this year. He's been okay. He's had some good weeks, and he's had some weeks where the field goal and turnovers are a bit dicey. I'll be also looking at the moment to get in Shamet, and then I'll try and rejig my side around a little bit, I think, to maybe get in at Jenkins. So I might have to play one of Shamet or Jenkins on the court, which I don't want to. But that is the go at the moment. But what that allows me to do is I haven't used a boost yet, which I'm really happy about. I know a lot of guys ahead of me have used a couple of boosts already. But I've also been able to keep an extra premium that I think most people have. Like I'm actually going to be fielding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 premiums in my team this week, as opposed to I think a lot of people still have the 5, unless you've actually probably used a couple of boosts to get that extra player in. So whilst I might not rise again this week, or I might kind of plateau, hopefully, I think I'm really being a bit smart in saving some of these boosts to hopefully attack a really couple of good premiums on a nice run, maybe after that awkward kind of 2-3 game round in round 7. That's my plan moving forward.
Yep. Sorry, I did mention obviously Butler as a bonus out, but I also sent Wemby out, which I'm not 100% sure with, but if I want to get Barnes and I want to get Jokic, it has to be done, sort of thing. I could sacrifice Barnes and keep Wemby, which might not be too bad. Barnes does get 2 extra games over the next 3 weeks, so I'm kind of hoping that'll be the difference maker. But then, as we've seen, anytime you kind of bank on that, especially, I mean, as much as you mentioned Barnes has a pretty good schedule, those could be rest games because they could easily blow out Brooklyn. So that would then defeat the whole purpose. And then I've kind of debatably wasted a boost for no reason. So that would be a bit silly. But awesome. We will wrap it up there. Boz, where can the people find you?
Yeah, over on Twitter or X, SC_Boz. Post a little bit here and there about NBL, mostly post about NBA. Definitely pretty active once lockout lifts on a Monday night, and then very active right before lockout closes, or not closes, but that first game kind of is locked in on that Tuesday morning, posting my team and answering some questions that you guys might have. So please feel free to hit me up with any of those things.
Absolutely beautiful, mate. You can find me at just on X, Verns_XC. I'm nowhere near as active as Boz. I post some things here and there and maybe comment on his stuff. But if you want to follow along with my team, I also do Verns Supercoach over on YouTube. Just a bit of a team update, sort of mentioned it before. You can just come along. You sort of see my team on the screen, sort of my thought process through some of this stuff and my logic behind it. But I'll be honest, this is where the real magic happens. So anyway, till next time, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For those that have liked and subscribe for the consistent injection of Supercoach content directly into the YouTube feed. Till next time.